Welcome to today's presentation, Legislative Grants Claiming. My name is Brooke Brennan. I am the Assistant Director of Financial Administration within the Bureau of Contract Management. After today's presentation, our hope is that your organization will understand how to correctly submit a request for payment on a legislative grant with the Office of Children and Family Services. Our agenda includes an overview of claim guidelines, required items for claims, where we will cover the New York State Claim for Payment Form, the OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report, the OCFS Legislative Grants Project Report, and supporting documentation when applicable. We will go over the process for submitting your claims to OCFS. Our agenda continues with additional items to consider: authorized signatory, using petty cash, non-reimbursable expenses, addressing adjusted or rejected claims, advance fund requests, closing the contract, fiscal sanctions. We will review a sample claim, and finally, we will direct you to other resources if you still have questions. Let's begin with an overview of claim guidelines. Today's presentation will be a brief walkthrough of the instructions posted online. The legislative claim package can be found online at the address listed on the slide. Please refer to the posted instructions for further details to ensure the claim is completed properly. Overview of claim guidelines. All expenses must be incurred within the contract term and included in the executed contract budget. Claims should be submitted in accordance with Attachment D in your contract. Submitted claims cannot duplicate reimbursement of expenses received from other sources or for costs previously claimed. If an expense is paid by check, the check cannot be made out to cash. Claims that include unacceptable or incomplete documentation will be reduced to reflect the amount of acceptable documentation that was submitted. Continuing with, when a claim is adjusted or rejected, a notice detailing the amount and reason for the adjustment or rejection will be provided to the contractor via mail or email to the individuals listed in the contract. Staffing changes are required to be noted in the OCFS Legislative Grants Project Report under the Staffing Changes section. If OCFS is not notified of changes in staff funded by a grant contract, claimed expenses may be rejected. Both the New York State Claim for Payment Form and the OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report must be signed by an individual listed as authorized to sign vouchers within the Summary of Organizational Information chart submitted with the executed contract. Required items for claims. All claims are required to include the following items: the New York State Claim for Payment Form, AC 3253-S. It's required to be signed by an authorized individual. The OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report, required to be signed by an authorized individual and completed for all budget categories being claimed. Please note, required contractor signatures must be completed by a person authorized to sign vouchers within the Summary of Organizational Information form submitted with the contract. OCFS Legislative Grants Project Report, supporting documentation of all expenses claimed for contracts over $25,000. Supporting documentation is not required to be submitted with a claim for contracts at or below $25,000 unless requested. We will take a closer look at each of these items next. A New York State claim for payment is a required component of a claim and/or advance. Always submit the claim for payment form with an original authorized signature. When completing the form, you only need to complete fields at the top half of the form. Vendor name, enter the legal name of the organization. Vendor identification number, your unique 10-digit New York State vendor ID. This is not the TIN or EIN. Address, city, state, and zip code. Enter the payment address as shown in the executed contract or as updated in the New York State-wide Financial System, SFS. Note, payments will be sent using the method established by the organization within SFS. OCFS cannot see or update this information. Only the organization can see addresses or bank account information by logging into the SFS vendor portal. Enter the 7-character contract number located at the top of the executed contract. Description of material service. Enter the claim period, or if any advance payment, enter the word advance. Amount. Enter the total dollar amount of expenses being claimed in the amount area. The amount must be the same as the total payment requested on the cover page of the OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report. Vendor certification. Vendor's signature. An individual authorized to sign claims, as indicated in the executed contract under the Summary of Organizational Information, must sign the certification. Failure to sign in the designated signature area may result in a rejected claim. Complete the other identifying information, title, name of company, and the date signed. The next required item is the OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report. Completion of this report includes the following: cover page, summary page, applicable budget category pages being claimed, salary and fringe, consultant contractual services, equipment supplies, other expenses. The OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report is available in 2 formats: Microsoft Excel or Adobe PDF. Regardless which version you choose, the steps for completing the report are the same. On the cover page, complete the following: organization name, enter the legal name of the organization, contract number, enter the 7-character contract number located on the executed contract, report claim period, list the period covered by the claim. For example, 1/1/24 to 3/31/2024, 4/1/24 to 6/30/2024, etc. All expenses claimed should have occurred during the dates specified. The dates entered must be within the executed contract term and the same as the dates indicated on the OCFS Legislative Grants Project Report and on the New York State Claim for Payment form. Checkboxes. Identify and mark all applicable checkboxes. Continuing with certifying officer's signature. An individual authorized to sign claims must sign, as indicated on the Summary of Organizational Information submitted with the executed contract. Print certifying officer's name. Clearly list the name of the individual signing the form. Date, the date the form was signed. Certifying officer's contact email. Please enter a valid email for certifying officer. Total payment requested. Total listed on the summary page. Following the cover page is the summary page of the report. The summary page is a high-level overview of the reimbursement request. The totals requested should be within the maximum values listed in the executed contract budget. At the top of this page and every subsequent page, be sure the header fields are completed: organization name, contract number, and report period of claim. For each applicable category of expense, enter the total requested for reimbursement. These total amounts should be identical to what is listed on each individual budget category page in the report. Budget category pages. There are 4 budget category pages in the report. Only complete the budget categories being claimed and approved for use within the executed contract budget. There are 4 budget category pages. 1. Salary and fringe. 2. Consultant contractual services. 3. Equipment and supplies. And 4. Other expenses. We will look at each of these next. For the salary and fringe category, there are 2 sections to complete. Salary expenditures. Any employee listed on this form should also be listed in the approved budget or as noted in prior staffing changes. Payroll period covered by payment. Enter the period covered by payment. Use a single line per pay period. The payroll period should match how often staff are being paid, usually weekly or biweekly. Employee name. Enter the employee's name. Employee title. Enter employee's title. Amount requested for reimbursement. Enter the total amount requested for reimbursement. Fringe benefits and payroll taxes. The contractor is required to pay mandatory employer payroll taxes, Social Security, New York State unemployment insurance, New York State disability insurance, and workers' compensation for all employees. These costs are not required to be claimed against the OCFS contract, but are required to be covered by New York State law. Additional fringe benefit expenses in a claim may include pension, health, life, or dental insurance. The total fringe benefits and payroll taxes chargeable to an OCFS contract cannot exceed the approved OSC rate. Date of payment. Enter the date of payment. Description of expense. Enter description of the expense. Example, FICA, unemployment. Amount requested for reimbursement. Enter the total amount requested for reimbursement. The next category is the consultant contractual services expenditures. Consultants are self-employed individuals who are not supervised by your organization. They perform jobs as determined appropriate according to general descriptions provided in written agreements. Since they are not employees, they are responsible for their own mandatory fringe benefits. Example, employer share of Social Security, workers' compensation, and SUI, and are responsible for remitting their own state and federal income taxes. Contractual services include any costs that have a formal or informal contract, such as a rental of real estate, lease of equipment, insurance, payroll services, janitorial services, and general contracting services. Complete the following for this category. Date of payment. Enter the date of payment. Name of vendor paid. Enter who the payment was payable to. Description of expenses. Enter description of the service. Amount requested for reimbursement. Enter the total amount requested for reimbursement. The next category on the report is for equipment and supplies expenditures. Equipment is any non-consumable, tangible property having a useful life of more than 1 year. Supplies are those items that will be consumed during the life of the project. They may include office supplies, program supplies, janitorial supplies, etc. Any single item costing $1,000 or less is considered a supply. Date of purchase. Enter the date of purchase. Name of vendor paid. Enter the name of the vendor that was paid. Description of purchase. Enter the description of item or items purchased. Amount requested for reimbursement. Enter the total amount requested for reimbursement. Finally, the last category is other expenses. This section should include any costs that do not fit into other expense categories. Examples may include but are not limited to travel, postage, telephone, utilities, conference fees, and advertising. Date of purchase. Enter the date of purchase. Name of vendor paid. Enter the name of the vendor that was paid. Description of purchase. Enter description of the items purchased. Amount requested for reimbursement. Enter the total amount requested for reimbursement. Please note, expenses incurred prior to the contract term are not reimbursable. List expenditures under the appropriate category on the report. An advance issued is against future expenses. It is not itself an expense and should not be included in this report. The last form to complete is the Legislative Grants Project Report. This report describes the work and activities performed under the contract and must link back to the Attachment C contract work plan within the executed contract. A project report must be submitted with each claim to provide details on the work performed during the time period claimed. The form header fields should be completed and aligned with the other claim documents. Next, complete the objectives section of the project report. Each objective in the executed contract must be addressed separately. Describe the progress in meeting each project objective, including the number of people served, the frequency of services provided, and the activities that took place. For staff funded by the contract, if any individuals listed in the budget have changed, these changes must be reported in the staffing changes section. And other activities or accomplishments. Describe any other activities or accomplishments related to your project. If you have produced any outreach or publicity, materials, brochures, newsletters, etc., or have been the subject of a newspaper article, attach a copy. Results of the project. This section must be completed at the end of the project when submitting your final claim. The final claim will not be paid until this information is provided. Describe the successes and any failures of the project and state your recommendations for potential future project activities. Next, we will cover any supporting documentation that you are required to submit with the claim. Supporting documentation of all expenses claimed for contracts over $25,000. Financial documentation is not required to be submitted with the claim for contracts at or below $25,000. However, it must be readily available in the event it is requested. For easy reference, a table with supporting documentation examples is included in the Legislative Claim Guide for Payments and Reporting. Helpful tips for organizing supporting documentation. 1. Group supporting documentation by expense category. 2. Within each category, sort the supporting documentation in the same order as listed on the OCFS Legislative Grants Expenditure Report. Example, payroll reports should be in date order aligning with what is listed on the salary category of the report. 3. When claiming a consultant contractual category expense, include copies of the contracts and consultant agreements if they were not previously submitted. 4. All supporting documentation for claims must be retained for a period of 7 years from the last payment date. This includes subcontractors as well. They should also retain all supporting documentation. Next, we will cover the process for submitting claims to OCFS. Contracts valued $25,000 and below may either mail claim requests to the address below or submit the claim request via email to lguclaims@ocfs.ny.gov. Please note that if a claim is emailed and the contract value is over $25,000, it will not be processed until the hard copy request is received in the mail. Contracts with a value over $25,000 are required to mail the claim request and all supporting documentation to OCFS at the address below. There are some additional items to consider when preparing the claim. Authorized signatory. A person authorized to sign vouchers was identified within the summary of organizational information submitted with the contract. If this person is no longer available, you must identify a new signatory by submitting a request to the contract manager on the organization's official letterhead signed by the board chair, executive director, or another individual authorized to legally bind the organization. For contracts under $10,000, the authorized signatory is defined on the contract cover page. Using petty cash. To facilitate the payment of certain minimal charges that cannot be handled by check, contractors may establish a petty cash fund. This fund is simply an alternative means to pay certain expenditures in cash. It is important to remember that expenses paid in this manner must be fully documented by receipts and invoices and are subjected to the same regulations and accounting practices as expenditures paid by check. The petty cash reimbursement must not exceed $500 per contract, and all disbursements made out of petty cash must be for approved expenses listed within the executed contract. Note, all petty cash claim submissions must be clearly labeled as petty cash on the claim form. Non-reimbursable expenses. These are examples of non-allowable expenses. This list is not all-inclusive. New York State sales tax, late fees, interest expenses, or fines and penalties, fundraising expenses, alcoholic beverages, gift cards, cash payments over $500, duplicate reimbursement of costs and services received from other sources. Addressing adjusted or rejected claims. If documentation submitted to support a claim is not sufficient, OCFS will send a claim adjustment or rejection letter to the organization. The letter will list the cause of the adjustment or rejection to permit the contractor to resolve the issue and submit a new claim. Prior to submitting a new claim, all items identified within the claim, adjustment, or rejection letter should be fully resolved to ensure the new claim will be processed successfully. A copy of the rejection or adjustment letter should be submitted with the new claim submission to expedite processing. Advance fund requests. Contractors may be eligible to receive an advance payment up to 25% of the contract value in accordance with the Attachment D of your executed contract. OCFS reserves the right to deny requests for advance payment. Please note the following. 1. An advance is not allowable if the contract term is more than 50% over and/or the deliverables are more than 50% complete. 2. If an advance is approved, the payment is part of the contract value and not additional funding. 3. Advance payments must be accounted for through the submission of acceptable claims for allowable expenses under the executed contract. To receive an advance payment, a contractor must submit a signed New York State claim for payment form. The advance claim is payable in accordance with Attachment D of the executed contract. An advance payment request submitted prior to the contract's approval is subject to automatic rejection. The advance fund request may either be mailed into the address listed on the cover page or submitted by email to lguclaims@ocfs.ny.gov. Closing the contract. At the end of the contract, if all expenses have been claimed but funds remain unused, an individual with the authority to bind the organization, example, the contract signatory, the executive director, or chief financial officer, should notify the contract manager at OCFS in writing that no additional expenses will be claimed. Once the letter is received, the contract will be closed if advance funds are not owed. This can also be accomplished by marking the final payment and closeout box on the Legislative Grants Expenditure Claim Report. To return unused advance funds received, a check payable to New York State OCFS listing the contract number should be submitted to the New York State Office of Children and Family Services, Bureau of Contract Management, 52 Washington Street, Room 202, South Building, Rensselaer, New York, 12144. Fiscal sanctions. A fiscal sanction is defined as an action placed against a contractor when fiscal requirements of a contract or agreement are not being met, or when the contractor is not in compliance with an applicable law, rule, regulation, guideline, policy, and/or procedure. The placement by OCFS of a contractor on fiscal sanctions will suspend all contract transactions with OCFS, including payment of claims for the current contract and all other contracts, including processing of amendments, applications, and new contracts. If a fiscal sanction is not resolved, the contractor may also be referred to the New York State Attorney General's Civil Recovery Bureau and may prompt a review of the contractor's responsibility. A fiscal sanction may be imposed for a variety of reasons, including but not limited to the following: failure to account for funds issued as an advance, failure to refund money owed due to fiscal irregularities revealed by an audit or an investigation. Program monitoring reveals that requirements of the contract and/or agreement are not being met and funds are owed to OCFS. If you have additional questions, please reach out to either the assigned BCM contract manager as noted on your award letter or send an email to lgu@ocfs.ny.gov. This concludes our presentation. Thank you.